So we are starting in First Samuel chapter 1. We are here introduced to a woman named Hannah. And today is Mother's Day. And we just want to say happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Happy Mother's Day to my mother who can hear me today. And happy Mother's Day to my wife who's here. And whatever other mother is listening, happy Mother's Day to you. Mothers are very, very important. Even in Genesis, it was said of Eve that she would be the mother of all living. And so mothers play such a very important role in the life of the world. Even Jesus, when he came into the world, he was born of a woman, the scriptures say. Jesus had a mother. And that's why it's so reasonable to understand why in John chapter 1, verse 14, it says, and the word became flesh and he came and dwelt among us. He came by means of a woman. And women are very powerful and mothers are very powerful, and our society needs to recognize the need for mothers, the need to support mothers, the need to encourage mothers, the need for fathers to be supportive of women that bear their children, because women are so important. The mother is very important. In this particular story, this afternoon, here in First Samuel chapter 1, we read about a woman named Hannah. She wasn't in one of the best situations that a woman would want to find herself in, but she was in this particular situation. And we're going to read about her uh, being in a marriage where she was wife number one, is what I call her. And she had a wife number two that she shared her husband with. And so I want to begin by reading the text and then gaining some insight on the importance of motherhood and how this mother strove to be a mother, even though at one time she was barren. So let's begin by reading the text. First Samuel chapter 1, beginning at verse 1. It says, now there was a certain man from Ramabbatham Zophim, from the hill country of Ephraim, and his name was Elkanah, the son of Jeroham, the son of Elihu, the son of Tohu, the son of Zuph, an Ephraimite. And he had two wives. The name of the one was Hannah, and the name of the other Peninnah. And Peninnah had children, but Hannah had no children. Now this man would go up from his city yearly to worship and to sacrifice to the Lord of hosts in Shiloh. And the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas, were priests to the Lord there. And when the day came that Elkanah sacrificed, he would give two portions, a portion to Peninnah his wife, and to all her sons and her daughters. But to Hannah he would give a double portion. For he loved Hannah, but the Lord had closed her womb. Her rival, however, would provoke her bitterly to irritate her, because the Lord had closed her womb. And it happened year after year, as often as she went up to the house of the Lord. She would provoke her. So she wept and would not eat. Then Elkanah, her husband, said to her, Hannah, why do you weep? And why do you not eat? And why is your heart sad? Am I not better than 10 sons? Then Hannah rose after eating and drinking in Shiloh. Now Eli the priest was sitting on the seat by the doorpost of the temple of the Lord. And she, greatly distressed, prayed to the Lord and wept bitterly. And she made a vow and said, O Lord of hosts, if thou wilt indeed look on the affliction of thy maidservant and remember me, and not forget thy maidservant, but wilt give thy maidservant a son, then I will give him to the Lord all the days of his life, and a razor shall never come on his head. Now it came about as she continued praying before the Lord that Eli was watching her mouth. As for Hannah, she was speaking in her heart. Only her lips were moving, but her voice was not heard. So Eli thought she was drunk. Then Eli said to her, "How long will you make yourself drunk? Put away your wine from you." But Hannah answered and said, "No, my lord, I am a woman oppressed in spirit. I have drunk neither wine nor strong drink, but I have poured out my soul before the Lord. Do not consider your maidservant as a worthless woman, for I have spoken until now out of my great concern and provocation." Then Eli answered and said, "Go in peace, and may the God of Israel grant your petition that you have asked of him." And she said, "Let your maidservant find favor in your sight." So the woman went her way and ate, and her face was no longer sad. So this story here really touched my heart many years ago when we were thinking about naming our daughter Hannah, and we chose this name here, and we named her Hannah out of the Bible. But this Hannah in the Bible here was in a very challenging situation. Apparently, Hannah was the first wife in this particular situation, but according to the customs of that day, I believe during that time, the custom was called the Code of Hammurabi. And that code stated that if the first wife was barren and not able to bear children, there was legal rights where the wife could go and choose a wife or even give her handmaid to her husband to be wife and to bear children. The same thing was true with Abraham. Abraham was given Hagar by his wife Sarah, and many of the patriarchs did the same thing. They had their wives' handmaids to have children in the times that the wives were barren, because in those days, and even today, there's so many people that feel shame because they're not able to bear children. Women are not able to bear children, and even in those days, it was uh, sort of a shame if a woman could not bear children. And so Hannah was a woman that had a relationship with God. She had a great relationship with her husband. Her husband loved her, the Bible says, but being a barren woman wasn't uh, anything to be happy about at all for her. She wanted to have her own child, and I value this particular story because Hannah went to God with her problem. She went to the temple and she prayed. She wasn't a powerless woman, but her womb was the only thing that wasn't producing. And so she went to the one that could change things for us, and that's God. And the thing about Hannah that I love is that she believed in the power of God. She believed in prayer. And even though the priest thought that she was drinking, she had no problem addressing the priest, Eli, and telling her, "I am not drunk as you suppose I am. I'm just under all of this pressure. I'm upset. I'm oppressed because I can't bear children." And if you were to keep reading on, we would see that later on, God answered Hannah's prayer. And thinking about mothers go through a lot today in their lives. They pray for their children. Even when their children grow older and are no longer at home, they pray for their children. And I'm just wondering, and I think about it, if I could even list the different things that I have been protected from because my mother prayed for me. Uh, I don't know what those things are, but I was saved from those things because of my mother's prayer. And to think about all the women in the world that are mothers that pray for their children on a daily basis, or how, depending on how much they pray for their children. But here this woman wasn't a mother, but she wanted to be a mother, and God made her a mother. And the other piece about Hannah is that she was a woman of her word. She made a vow. She said, "If you give me a child, then I will give my child to you back to the Lord." And that's exactly what Hannah did. When Samuel got to the age where he was weaned, about 5 years old, she gave her son to the priest and left him there. And every year after that, Hannah would bring him a new cloak. a new coat to wear every time she would come. And this is just a beautiful story in that this woman wanted a child. She wanted to not have this uh, negative reputation of not being able to bear a child. So much that she said, if you give me a child, Lord, I'm going to give the child back to you. And in saying all of that, when women have children and they give them back to God, that is such a great blessing and a great honor. Mothers don't have to make that vow, but this is the vow that this woman made. I pray that this lesson is something that inspires all mothers to not only pray, but also to direct your children towards a God that gives the things that we ask Him, the God that we should have faith in, the God that provides for us in times of stress and in the times of goodness. You guys have a great day. All right.